The other day, I was doing some work with one of my students on the high backhand volley. Tough, tough shot. And, this young lad, he's one of the better players in the country, doing some really good stuff, really young still. But it's really interesting that high up on that backhand volley was finding it super, super difficult. So I thought it was a good opportunity to do a little video, analyze some of his swing and his technique. And these are things he knows and he's going to be working on. And what I was doing here on the right, I'm actually not going to toggle it together this time because, it's a slightly different shot. We're in different parts. First thing to notice that I'm using my open stance, whereas he's using his closed stance. I try to get him to use his open stance a little bit more, but it's really difficult as a youngster still developing your strength, a very, very hard thing to do. So we had Stingray just firing some balls out, putting them in the similar place again and again. Okay, so let's take a little look at his technique first. So one of the things he's trying to work on is he's way too open. Like, I'm a big fan of an open racket position, but you notice there that his racket looking directly at the camera at the moment. So that's slightly too open. And where it comes from, his grip is just a little bit too open. And actually, it's really rare I see this. Really rare I see the backhand too open. Often I see it way too closed. But what I'd like, as he's starting to move across, we just use some comparison. At this angle, look at my racket there. It's nice and flat. You see the blade, you see the side of the racket. The racket strings are looking forward to the front wall. So my wrist would be cocked in this position. And I've actually got some other videos from other angles, which I'll look at as well, which are really cool. So feel free to go look on the channel and you can find them out. So as we're going across, definitely want an open racket face, but not overcompensating, because let's have a look at what he does. As he swings there, that's really difficult to come back around from there. So he's going over his head. Let me just go back a bit. Let me see if I can find it. Whereas I suppose I go over my head as well a little bit. And that's why I like these different angles, because sometimes I think I'm doing something and it's actually a little bit different. Let me just come back to mine and then I'll keep toggling back and forward. You see there, I'm nice and open. Racket goes behind, and then see how that racket face is still open. So at this point, the blade is looking up to the ceiling, and the opposite blade is looking downwards. I quite like that angle in that position. And again, it's quite an interesting one to see it from this angle, especially on that high backhand volley when I'm looking to maybe play a volley drop. My knuckles really open, looking up to the ceiling, as well as my forearm and my elbow. So these are all key fundamental bits. This is position 2 for the volley drop. Position 1, it's a bit more neutral there. Position 1 holding up there. Position 2, it falls around. And position 3 would be somewhere at the contact point around there. So my position 2, pretty decent there. Let's see his position 2. So he goes from position 1, gets his position 2, and yeah, look at what's starting to happen. You can probably see the thing I talk a lot about is that bulge in the wrist. The way his wrist is bulging upwards, trying to overcompensate for maybe what's going on in and around here a little bit. Okay, so then let's have a look at what his next phases are. And again, it's really interesting. His feels like, look at where it is. It's coming more from wrapped around his back there, whereas mine feels like it's a little bit more out. So again, there's a lot of work he has to do. And that's why I think there's this twiddle in the wrist starting to happen. He doesn't obviously get balance, and that's fine because we worked on this a little bit. But the control to go from there to there and actually play and control a volley drop is pretty minimal. Really, really hard to do from up in that high position. So going back to mine here on the right, you see that openness, those knuckles up, nice balance. Again, I'm using my open stance because it's a little bit easier to use the left leg when that ball is dipping and dropping in behind you. Again, he did a few later on, which I think I've got on the other video, which I'll have a look at, where I'd love to see him use his left leg there. But the trade-off is he's not strong enough right now. He'll do it and he'll be a little bit off balance. And let's look at some of the final bits. Look at how he's having to really rip and pull his follow through down, as opposed to me being more balanced and guiding and gliding and pushing that follow through into the right area. That top of the racket is pointing towards the target area. I'm staying nice and side on. My wrist is slightly cocked when I finished, but that for me is quite a solid finishing position. We'll just go to where it finishes and you see it. So it just gets above the tin and finishes in a nice position there, gluing to the side wall, making my opponent have to go hit a shot that's absolutely glued to that side wall. Really, really tough to do. But I think a lot of it's from that control of that follow through. And just looking back at my student here as he hits, because, okay, yes, it's high. So there's a natural inkling to go from this kind of low to high to low position. But what that does, it just causes a lot of inconsistency, really hard to control it there. And you'll notice he goes down and then pulls his follow through towards the camera. All just a little bit messy and totally fine because we're working on this. But if we can get him closer to this solidness there, it's balanced, the ball's dropped into a more optimal position. Sometimes I might need to take the ball up here and the whole swing is slightly different. I've got a whole bunch of videos talking about the high backhand volley when it's right up above your shoulder. And again, for him, yes, he had to take it high there, possibly because of his footwork position. So this is not the most fairest compare video, but you get the sense of some of the key things that hopefully I'm showing you. And again, just look at that solidness. One big thing I'm always coaching with people, stay side on. Look at how I'm finishing, and I'm trying to keep myself as side on as possible. There's a natural opening, but I only need to glance at the front wall with my eyes. I don't need to stare at it. I don't need to open up my full chest looking at the front wall, pushing back in a little bit more of a side on position. So I hope that helps everyone that's watching. A few little key tips to take away from there and think about, and good for my students to hopefully see this in replay as well. Anyone that's liking this, please do click in the link in the description. Be more than happy to give you a free personalized swing audit. Share the channel, subscribe to it, leave some comments. Would love to help all of you out as much as possible. Until the next video, I'll see you then. Bye-bye.